Good morning to all of you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes? Okay, thank you very much. First of all, I would like to thank the organizers for inviting me as a representative of my institution, the University of Deusto, and as a representative of the Institute of European Studies that I coordinate and that I direct. And it is an honor for me to be here. It is the first time, and I hope it will not be the last. The very first things I have seen in Bucharest have really caught my attention. So thank you very much. And I will try to do my best, and I will try to be short, which is always something very difficult to do in a presentation. My title is yes. A microphone?
I think that it will be better, yes?
Yes, okay.
20.
Okay, then I think it's much better now. The title of my talk is Language, Power and International Relations, and coming from the Institute of European Studies, I have tried to focus this topic on the case of English in the EU. I'm going to talk about the. Oh, that's fine. Yeah, so I have focused my presentation on the case of the European Union, and first I will try to summarize briefly what the language reality in the EU is, and what the language doctrines are. And then I will also briefly refer to the imbalance of power in favor of English, whether there is an alternative to English lingua franca, and then, almost as a conclusion, the importance of maintaining multilingualism in the EU. Right, okay. That languages are instruments of power is a reality. It is a reality. We know in many nation states, it is widely accepted. Many nation states have imposed throughout history their own national language. And we all know that there are still language conflicts throughout the world, also in European countries, and that in my own country, we have quite a few linguistic problems. Obviously Canada, everybody knows of India, Africa, etc., etc. So this is clear. That there is also a correlation between power and linguistic groups. This is also widely agreed. And of course, there is a correlation between the spread and the prestige of their languages. And we could mention many examples throughout history, but then if we mention the case of Latin with the Roman Empire and with the Church, two very important international actors. We can also mention the case of Spanish, also a very important international actor with the Spanish colonialization. The case of French, obviously, for a long time, as an economic and as an international actor since Napoleon. the case of French lasted, the important French lasted even when France, as an economic power, was an important international actor, had already come to an end. And then, of course, English took over little by little. In the post-Westphalian order of international society, with the increasing power of international organizations and with the process of globalization in all fields, the linguistic problem has become more and more challenging. And obviously, it has become more and more challenging for projects of political integration like the European Union. The linguistic issue in the European Union is problematic. It is a political issue. It is a highly technical issue. It has become more problematic as the number of languages spoken within the EU has increased with successive enlargements. So as I see it, and experts agree with this idea, it seems evident that in the case of the European Union, democratic citizenship is dependent on the preservation and the promotion of cultural diversity on the one hand, and on the other hand, it is also dependent on the achievement of a common sphere, which brings us again back to the idea of diversity and unity, and how we can achieve a balance between these two ideas. So this is the big challenge. The EU has this challenge of how to make the greatest possible number of EU citizens competent in 3 or more languages, and I would add, including English. And on the other hand, so how to be able to understand each other in one single language. That's the big challenge. According to the Eurobarometer of 2012, we are very far from this, unfortunately. English is taking ground. It is true within the EU, but even within the EU, a very small percentage of the population is able to speak in English. So let alone mastering English plus another language. So if it is true that English is slowly taking ground, the question is there an alternative to the use of English lingua franca? And in the short term, even in the long term, will it be possible to make the majority of EU citizens competent, not only competent in English, but also competent in another language, apart from their mother tongue, which in our case in Spain, in many regions, is not only competent in Spanish, but it's also competent in the regional minority languages. Okay, so obviously the language issue is generally overlooked. In theoretical terms, the tendency is to refer to cultural problems, or even religious problems. The language issue is generally overlooked, but it is at the core of international relations, not only in the EU, but also worldwide. So what happens with the language reality, from a legal point of view? The language regime was regulated in April 1958 by the very first resolution, by the first regulation of the council, right? And it was called determining the language to be used by the European economic community. So the founders of the European Economic Community regulated the language issue. This directive of 1958, which was actually the first directive of the Council, this directive came after Article 217 of the Treaty of Rome in 1957, which reads, and it's that one, the rules governing the languages of the institutions of the community shall without prejudice to the provisions contained in the rules of procedures of the Court of Justice be determined by the Council acting unanimously. And at this time, sorry, I have these directives here. This should be at the end, probably. Excuse me. Okay, here. This directive included these 8 articles. So in 1958, and I'm showing you these articles because these are the only articles we have. These are the only articles that regulate the linguistic issue in the EU. Okay, the most important one we would say is Article 1. The official languages and the working languages of the institutions of the community shall be Dutch, French, German, and Italian. So this is the key article. Right? All the other articles, in one way or another, modulate. The first one referred to the languages to be used with citizens, etc. Article 2 document which a member state or a person subject to the jurisdiction of a member state sends to the institutions of the community may be drafted in any of the official languages selected by the sender. The reply shall be drafted in the same language. So we have these 8 articles. I think the most important one would, as I said, is Article 1 for our purposes. Oh, sorry. Sorry, I'm going back to my text, sorry. Okay, I'm coming back to this. Obviously, this is the only regulation we have about for the linguistic issue in the EU. The problem is that at the time when the founding fathers decided on this regulation, there were only 4 languages involved. Only Dutch, French, German, and Italian. But today, with 23 languages, 23 official languages, plus Croatia in July this year, so 24 languages have to be considered, and of course the problem is much more complex. And this is the problem that in my view, the European Union has not addressed. And so we have this regulation, but the problem has increased. And not only this, not only the 23 official languages, also the non-majority languages, more than 60 the majority languages, more than 60 non-official languages, the so-called regional languages, that are spoken by around 40 million citizens as their mother tongue. And obviously, within each country, there is a great diversity of situations regarding the legal status. So this is a big challenge. The European institutions have claimed again and again, and they still again and again, that this is the foundation, that as part of the foundation of the European Union, that in order to construct this political project, we need to take into account the language regime, and not only the language regime of the 23 languages, official languages, but also the minority languages, and therefore the minority groups. Okay. Otherwise, if they are not taken into account, it would be marginalizing them, and that would be contradicting the foundation of the European project. Okay, so for the European institutions, the key elements for building the European project since the late 1970s and early 1980s is is to take into account all these minority groups, because of course from a demographic point of view they are important, and they are also potential sources of social and political conflicts. So multilingualism is a European value. It is a sign of identity that must be promoted and protected. It is a principle which stands radically against ranking one language above all others, because of the regulation we had in 1957. And from a theoretical perspective, relegating languages, groups would of course contradict their own theoretical foundations. Because the loss, they say, the loss of any of these languages would automatically mean a weakening of the tradition and wealth of multicultural and multilingual Europe. The question is that they have become, this multilingualism and plurilingualism have become political concepts closely related to the process of building the polity. So it is a long objective, and this long objective was set in 2003 by the heads of states at the council meeting in Barcelona, where they set as an objective the knowledge of two languages apart from the mother tongue or the mother tongues. They never said, and they never say, and the European Commission never indicates anywhere that English should be one of these two languages to be mastered, right, apart from the mother tongue. They never say that, obviously, for obvious reasons. And in order to move toward these long-term objectives, but the institutions, both the Council of Europe and the European Union, have implemented a number of measures. Both the Council of Europe and the European Union both are engaged in linguistic policy. The Council of Europe, to mention some, the Common European Framework, either people who are language teachers here will know what I'm talking about. The Common European Framework, the European Language Portfolio, the Guide for the Development of Language Education Policies in Europe, the European Charter for Regional or Minority Languages, which by the way was signed by Spain, but was not signed by France, by countries like France. The Framework Convention for the Protection of National Minorities, and the European Union, we know, all the Lingua programs, the Socrates and Leonardo da Vinci program, the Humanities programs, and obviously also the European higher education area, what we call the Bologna process, which, according to the European Parliament and other institutions, depends on its success on the language, on language learning. In 2001, the Parliament, European Parliament issued a directive, a resolution by the European Parliament on universities and higher education. Right? So, and according to these institutions, this means that facilitating the acquisition of other languages and the command of basic communication skills has become the responsibility of all governments, national governments, and education institutions alike. Education institutions, just like higher education institutions. So there are really many policies in the European Union, many programs. We had, I participated in a project, in many of these different projects. The question is, we have this resolution of 1958. The question is, concerning the 4 languages at the time, the question is, are these policies ambitious enough for such an ambitious political project? I would say that the common policy, this resolution that we have, is extremely limited. There are no precise rules as to how the Union must address its citizens, no precise rules. How to constitute, the no precise rules about how to constitute a common linguistic space or a common sphere, which is essential for participation in Europe. And of course, no sets of instructions of the language or languages to be used in international forums. Some countries do individually, like France. France imposes on many occasions the use of the French in international forums, but at the level of the EU, this is what we have nothing. Right? So in reality, what happens in the linguistic issue, like in many other areas, there is laissez-faire everywhere, and consequently there is no such equality, this equality that is referred to in the resolution. No equality in the language issue. Plurilingualism is more a wish than a reality. And English is taking round everywhere, in all fields, also at the institutional level. With all the limitations of it. If everybody spoke it would be fine. But unfortunately, the English is still spoken by a privileged group of people inside the Union and outside. Okay, so why English? Again, there's no need to explain this in detail. The increasing processes of globalization, many the large companies in Europe and outside Europe, they also use English as international communication. Also, it is a tendency for international higher educations to teach through the medium of English in order to attract potential students from outside. But obviously, this is of course confirmed by the 2012 Humanities report. English is more or less the only language taught in primary schools in many countries of the EU. So again, there's this contradiction. We are teaching one, not two. And it is also suggested in the Humanities report that the main motivation for language learning is the language prestige, language power, which again poses questions as to the possibility of building this European polity as language being one of the main pillars. But, so you see, in this table, what we see, English 67 in 2012, we have the Eurobarometers here, 2012 and 2006. These percentages refer to the number of people who say that English is useful. Okay, so 60% in Europe consider English is useful, whereas in 2006, 68% consider that English is useful. I say useful, not that they speak. They consider it useful for their children. German in 2012, 17 against 22 in 2006. French 16 against 25 in 2006, the Spanish 14 against 16. Okay? So the number of people who consider that these languages are useful for them or for their children. So we already perceive here that there is a trend that goes down slowly. That is, 4 years ago or 6 years ago, more people thought that English was useful than today. And French, of course, you see, and German, the other two important languages at level of institutions are also losing in power. It is also important to so these are the two trends. That is, this second language that, according to the heads of state, all European citizens would need to command in order to feel, in order to achieve the European identity, European citizenship that is much needed. This of course is not being. This is playing against them, okay? Because obviously less people speak French and less people speak German, and even less people speak Spanish. But not more people speak English, not at the moment, according to these statistics, right? Statistics, right, that you can find in the European Union. And this is in reality throughout Europe. Now, how does this affect the institutions? Right, the internal functioning of the institutions, the European institutions themselves. Again, the common linguistic resolution is limited, and the principle of equality proclaimed in 1957 is hardly applied. Right, we have only 5 institutions. 5 institutions are legally bound by the obligation to have all 23 languages as official and working. In this first document we have official and working at the same level. They're official and they're working. 5 institutions only have 23 languages or are bound by this obligation, so the European Court of Justice, the European Council, the European Commission, the European Parliament, and the Court of Auditors. And this obligation only from 2003 onwards. So it means that before 2003, these 5 institutions I have mentioned were not legally bound by this obligation, but in 2003, a Dutch citizen complained because she could not read the webpage of the Office of the Harmonization of the International Markets in her own language. So as months later, we have this legally bound context, right? And oddly enough, although the official community website should be in the 23 official languages, some are not. The regional policy for Regio is only in 11 languages. CORDIS, the Community Research and Development Information Service, is only in 6 languages, etc., etc. Whenever the web pages are in English plus some other languages, not all, whether 6 or 11, the choice of the language seems to depend on demographic grounds only. Demographic grounds only. And it means that Romania would be inside in most of the websites. Poland, Romania, but not countries like Bulgaria, would not belong to these powerful languages. Right? Programs such as Lingua, Socrates Action 4, Language Learning and Teaching, provides information only in English. Oddly enough, programs such as English. So this and this unbalance affects what they call the lesser used languages. The lesser used languages. Sometimes this means languages like Bulgarian, Estonian, okay, because in demographic terms, these countries are not large enough. Sometimes by lesser used languages, they mean the minority languages, like the language we speak in the Basque Country, Basque or Galician or Gaelic. So even the terms are not clarified, right? The EU Court of Justice uses only French in the proceedings, only French, whereas the European Central Bank, oddly enough, has turned English into its only official language. I'm saying oddly enough because the British don't use the euro. However, they have turned, in Frankfurt, however, they have turned English into the only language, and they have got it in their webpage. That's the language policy. So, in the proceedings, all the preparatory meetings, even if they have the 23 languages as official, usually the documents are prepared in French, English, French, and German. Which means that even the European, I'm just finishing, yes. Even the European Commission has established a distinction between official and working languages. At the beginning of this resolution, we had parallelism, official, working languages, and the European Commission itself has decided to establish this distinction. If you access the page of the European Commission, you will read paragraphs like this. Due to time and budgetary constraints, relatively few working documents are translated into all languages. The European Commission employs English, French, and German in general as procedural languages, whereas the European Parliament provides translations in different languages according to the needs of its members. Obviously, and this is the challenge, with 506 possible linguistic combinations, right? It is impossible for Parliament and the other institutions to deal with the daily communication needs of multilingual Europe. And therefore, for practical purposes, the lingua franca imposes itself. Now, just some brief comments. What will happen with English? We don't know. But we also know that throughout the histories, languages, important languages, have disappeared. Okay, and what we know nowadays is that English is not developing at a higher speed as Chinese or Spanish, for example. So there is a possibility that other stronger languages will maybe in the long future replace English. We don't know. Globalization has a counterpart, and that's regionalization. And certain regional languages are becoming important. In the case of the EU, we have the two challenges remain, and the European Union does not know how to address this issue. Okay, the difference between working languages and official languages. So how to make EU citizens competent in English, since that seems to be the lingua franca everywhere, and will stay here for a while. Okay. And how to make European citizens competent in other two languages, their own and another, in order to build this European polity. Some of us would like to see this as a reality in the future. And I'm going to leave it here since time is over. Thank you very much.